What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Alarm NASCAR DFS podcast. I'm Dan Malin, and I'm joined, as always, by our FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year, Matt Selz. Matt, how you doing? We are fresh off a Sunday start, Monday finish at Michigan International Speedway. Tyler Reddick gets his second win of the season. It was a Monday finish. I don't know, kind of a quick turnaround for the drivers because they finish a race on Monday and then they have to go from Michigan to Charlotte to Daytona for a race Saturday evening. Busy week for them, busy week for us. But how you doing?
I'm good. I do applaud NASCAR for getting in the full race, moving it to Monday. Also, props to the fans. I saw that there was like a boatload of fans that showed up on Monday. They only had one gate open, apparently, from what I saw, for people to get in. Or not all of the gates were open, I guess. But yeah, there were long lines to get in. So good on the fans for showing back up. We got a Monday race without Truex winning. LaJoy spun, flipped in the air. That was a little disconcerting to see. Glad he's okay. But I do think it had more to do with the wind and kind of how quickly he turned sideways than anything with the car. So, we'll see. I'm sure NASCAR will make adjustments. But as soon as LaJoy spun, we had to know that Reddick was going to win because the last time LaJoy flipped in the air, Reddick also won. So there's that core. If we know ahead of time that LaJoy is going to spin in the air, we can all bet on Reddick to win. Also, props to McDonald's for getting their first win in NASCAR, not on a plate track as a main sponsor. So there's that.
Wait, that's their first one ever on a non-plate track?
On a non-plate track, the other three have been Daytona or Talladega.
Oh, that's insane, actually.
When Bubba won at Kansas, it was not in a McDonald's car.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You think like they've been a sponsor and they've been around so long.
Yeah, I mean, that dates back to I think Jimmy Spencer won in like 94 with them. Bubba's Talladega win came in a McDonald's car. So there's that. But all of the other ones are Daytona or Talladega. So that's McDonald's first main sponsor win on a, let's say, standard, non-plate track.
Well, we are heading to a more standard plate track, even though they don't really do the restrictor plates anymore.
Still they still drive like it though.
Yeah. Pack racing, drafting, all that fun stuff. Not my favorite kind of racing. Yeah. Oh my god. I forgot about that.
Hopefully, with 40 fewer laps, we'll have
a track where you can certainly go upwards of 200 miles an hour. And in the Daytona 500, saw a lot of guys going like 180.
Yeah. Hopefully, with 40 fewer laps, there'll be less fuel saving with this one. That did take some of the excitement out of the Daytona 500 for sure. But yeah, this is also not the final regular season race like it has been the last few years. It is the penultimate regular season race. Darlington next weekend for the Southern 500 is the regular season. And so it's kind of nice to see, yes, there's a wild card, but like the last playoff spot isn't being determined by a wild card race. You still have a race that's relatively in your hands. We all know, we'll talk about Darlington more next week, but we all know that can be a tough track, but it's way more in your hands there than it is at Daytona. So I do have to say there's some interesting stuff that I've been looking at this week. Not just looking across the board at plate tracks, not just looking across the board at Daytona, but actually breaking down splits between the 500 and the 400 and seeing, how well people do and whatnot. And when looking at the last 10 Coke 400s compared to the last 10 Daytona 500s, there is only one driver that ranks in the top 10 of average finish in both of those.
Is he a current driver?
One, yes.
Kyle Busch?
It is not. It is. We already referenced him earlier.
Bubba?
Yeah, Bubba is
Oh,
the only
wow.
one that ranks in the top 10 of average finish in both of those data sets.
Guess I shouldn't be too surprised because, I mean, he's
So,
finished second in the Daytona 500 like twice.
yeah. He's
I'm surprised
actually
it's not
better in the
Hamlin because he's
400.
won the.
He's better in the 400 than he is in the
Okay.
500. But if you look at the last 5, there's like 3 guys that rank in the top 10 of both. There's Bubba, Chase Elliott is one, and then Alex Bowman is the other one. So kind of an interesting subset of stuff. But yeah, it's so we're gonna be looking at that kind of stuff this week in the playbook, not just plate tracks across the board, but kind of breaking down splits between Daytona because they're different. Not only different times of year, so you have different weather. One of them's a night race. One of them usually starts as a day race. It may end as a night race. And of course, 40 fewer laps makes a difference as to when guys go, when guys start to push, when single file happens, stuff like that.
I guess my next question is since this NASCAR is going to Florida this
Yes.
weekend, Florida's been getting hammered with some bad weather, especially
Yes.
as of Wednesday. And the weather does not look great for this particular weekend. If you just go to
It does
weather.com,
not.
it's got thunderstorms almost every day. Yeah, this doesn't look too promising.
Now, to be fair, it is Daytona in August, so
Yeah.
there's generally always a chance of thunderstorms in Florida in the afternoon because it's kind of how it cools off.
Yeah.
Um,
But the problem is that this track is so massive that even if it does rain and they lose the track, it's going to take 2.5 to 3 hours just to dry it.
Correct. It's also a problem that it could literally be raining in one set of corners and not the other.
Yep.
We've seen that happen where it's literally raining in turn 1 and the rest of the track is just fine. So I do think, if I remember correctly, on Thursday, I think it was kind of late, like early afternoon scattered storms that are coming in on
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday. And then, so hopefully by the time the evening happens, it'll be out of the way and or dried
I
out.
could see qualifying getting rained out for
Yeah,
probably Xfinity. I imagine they prioritize getting Cup in, but it's also up in the air. It says 50% chance of rain during the day on Friday. Saturday, it's 50% during the day, 40% at night. I'm just going to chalk it up and assume we are in for some rain Friday and Saturday.
yeah, and everybody going, well, why don't they just move it to Sunday? It's not like it gets better on
No.
Sunday. There's literally at least a 33% chance of rain every day between now and September 4th, according to Weather Channel at Daytona. So that's not what we call ideal. I did see NASCAR Chasm on Twitter the other day said we should send Mother Nature a fake NASCAR schedule next year to keep them to keep the rain at bay. So we'll see when they get it in. Daytona does have lights. They've been known to run, races overnight there. I mean, they run the 24 hours of Daytona, so there's no curfew. There's no like they have to be off the track by midnight. So
They
no
finished, I
practice.
think, an Xfinity Series race at like 1 a.m. a few years ago.
They did. They finished the Daytona 500 at like 1:30 a.m. a few years ago too. So,
Nice.
so there's that. Then there's a little bit of an oddity that we have truck. The truck race is Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon. It's actually the
Milwaukee?
first race of their playoffs. It's Milwaukee.
Yeah.
First race of their playoff schedule.
Yeah, the Milwaukee Mile, which is kind of a cool track, actually.
Yeah.
To be honest, pretty happy that they're racing there. So there you go. Your Sunday isn't totally lost. If the Cup Series race does get in on Saturday, your Sunday's not totally lost. You do have racing on Sunday with the trucks and it's playoffs. So
What happens if ultimately Saturday is rained out? Do you think that they would reschedule for potentially Sunday early morning or afternoon? Because you obviously, I don't know if they. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter because the Cup race is on either NBC or USA, and the trucks are going to be on FS1. Do you think that they would want to compete for ratings? Obviously, the Cup Series would win.
That's a very good question.
Or do they just move it to Sunday night?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would imagine that they would do at least Sunday afternoon because Premier League has started, and they show those games on NBC and USA,
Yeah.
and they end. I think the last game kicks off at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So 2-hour window for that. So you're talking about at least 1:30 in the afternoon to not get him in the way of Premier League. So I think they'd be more concerned with that than the truck race, because I think the crowd that's going to watch the truck race is going to watch the truck race. I just think NBC personally isn't going to want to compete against their other product.
What's the worst that could happen? NASCAR could just throw this on the NBC Sports app. It's not like anyone's ever had any issues with that app before.
Yeah, exactly. We're Peacock. But welcome Lee Diffie, though. Heck of a weekend to come in to the booth for NBC. We get Lee Diffie calling the Cup races from here on out.
Was he on MRN?
Lee Diffie is he's a British racing guy. If you watch the Olympics for track, he did a lot of the track during the Olympics.
Who am I thinking?
Open wheel racing stuff. He's called NASCAR races in the past. So yeah, Rick Allen is gonna go to the Xfinity booth, and Lee Diffie.
I think only Rick Allen is upset by this news.
I would agree. Now all we got to do is get rid of Jeff Burton in the NBC booth, and it's more watchable. So there's that. But I don't want to harp on the NBC has been miles better than Fox for sure. But yeah, so with that, we want to start breaking down the drivers now. When we're talking pricing here for the drivers, just know it doesn't really matter. It's like
it doesn't matter.
It's like the points in whose line is it anyway? They give
don't really matter. I would say we could just kind of just pick and choose the drivers that we like, and this is all subject to change because where a driver starts really does matter at this kind of racing. But yeah, we can switch over to DraftKings.
We got the handy dandy pricing deal going here. Yeah, so general strategy here. I know a lot of people just say stack the back, just take 6 dudes on DK or 5 on FanDuel who are starting 30th on back, and just
it works in cash games
to happen. What?
It works for cash games.
Yeah, if you're gonna play cash games, that's fine. You can pick 5-6 guys starting, I don't know, in the back 25, and then wait for chaos to happen and hope those guys avoid it. If you're playing in tournaments, though, that's not really the best way. You may cash doing that in tournaments.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be you may min cash doing that in tournaments. So the best way to do it is you get, generally speaking, 1 guy starting in the top 10. You get maybe 2 starting 11th through 20th. And then the rest of the guys you're getting 25th on back.
Yeah.
Is basically, and when the playbook comes out and you see the scoring breakdown and trends and the graphs, it generally bears that out. Now, the one thing you're not going to want to I don't want to say not target, but don't have to be too concerned about is laps led. Because while you will see some guys click off several laps in a row here because it'll go single file and they'll just decide to follow the leader for a bit, it's not like you're talking laps led dominators where one guy's going to lead 80 laps of the 160 lap race. That's not going to happen. So, not to mention that the pack racing, generally yo-yos people back and forth on consecutive laps. So, I mean, if you get laps like great, but it's not like we're taking the pole sitter because they should click off a bunch of laps early. You know, not a key to the strategy this week.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're just, if you get it, that's gravy. You take it, but it's not one of those things where where last week where we were trying to get two dominators into the build, and we kind of had a good idea who it would be. AJ Allmendinger a couple years ago in an Xfinity Series race, he was a chalky play because he started P34, and so the PD was on his side. But he also somehow, I think, stage 2 just ran ahead for single file for the entire stage, and then a little bit of the third stage. He led 58 laps, and so while he was a popular play, just strictly because of the position differential, like you can't really project who's going to lead the laps, which is why you just can't project like that kind of prop for this kind of race, especially even fastest laps. So it's like if you have a driver in your lineup and he is that guy that just leads a single file train in stage 2 and early in stage 3, congratulations, you take those points and just hope that they don't wreck.
Yeah, exactly. And with weather, we could get all sorts of crazy pit strategies as well. Because keep in mind, if they get in half the race, the NASCAR can just call it and make it official. So there's a whole lot of stuff in play. You and I have seen weather cause havoc at a Daytona race before with bad pit strategy, just ill-advised moves. And generally speaking, if you're newer to this, fastest laps come in the middle of the pack at Daytona. They don't come from the guys just because a guy is leading, doesn't mean they're getting the fastest lap like your normal intermediate, like last weekend at Michigan. So with that being said, we only have 2 drivers on DraftKings at 10K or above. One of them is not surprising. One of them is a tad surprising.
Is Keselowski the more surprising of the two?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, just Denny's won here multiple times. Not to say that Brad hasn't. Brad has. But Denny's won. He's a 3-time Daytona 500 winner. However, if we look at the Coke 400, doesn't have quite the prolific finishing history in the 400-mile race as he does in the 500-mile race. But he does have the pedigree. He is arguably one of the best plate racers in the field. So he gets honored with the most expensive. Keselowski, if you look at his plate history and his career as a whole, it's hard to argue that he's not one of the better ones, right?
Sure.
But when you look at, the last 10 Coke 400s, and we sort by average finish, Keselowski's average finish in the last 10 Coke 400s is 23.5. And that includes a win and a second-place finish last year, by the way. So there's a lot of high numbers bringing up that average finish. He's got 4 top 20s in 10 races, and he's got multiple finishes. He's got a 34th, 35th, 36th, 39th place finish in that grouping too. So not to say it's an overpay, because he's certainly capable of winning these races. He finished second in this race last year. Trying to remember where he finished the Daytona 500 earlier this year. He wrecked out, 33rd.
Yeah, you wrecked.
Yeah. But it's just interesting given that, RFK isn't really thought of as a high-level team just yet. He's the second.
I do believe he finished second at Talladega, though.
Let's double check. The Geico 500, he did. He did, in fact, finish second. So there's, and he was 10-2 in that race. So, there's reasons to play him. I'm just saying those two have not been as consistent as you would expect to higher level plate racers to be as well.
You can always tell when we're at a a super speedway or a drafting race just based on Kyle Larson's price tag, because
Yes.
only 4 times this year has he been priced under 10K. Daytona and Atlanta, he was 9,500. Talladega, he was 9,000. This week, he's 9,200. Every other race this year, he's been over 10K.
Yeah, you can do. He does not have very good luck or history, at plate tracks. To be honest, in fact, if you look at the last 10 Coke 400s, the only 2 dudes with multiple races run here and a worse average finish than Kyle Larson, Todd Gilliland and Chase Briscoe.
Oh,
All 3 of them are in the 27 range for average finish.
that's fantastic company.
And for Larson, it's worse because it's over 9 races. The other guys are only over 2 and 3 respectively. So it's not his race. And by the way, the Daytona 500 isn't that much better.
Mm.
Let me see. All right. Well, I stand corrected. The 500 is more consistent, but so far he has not had the luck in the 400-mile race. So I tend to fade Kyle Larson. Plate races, if it bites me, it bites me. But there's
I'm
price lower.
I mean, I'm more inclined just to play Elliott and Byron. Byron obviously won the 500 this year. I think Elliott, within the next gen era, does have a win, I think, at Talladega. He also won at the new configuration for Atlanta as well. I just have more faith in those 2 for this race.
Yeah.
But I mean, even the guy there. Yes to Bowman if he doesn't go out and qualify in the front row.
That's reasonable. Although the speed is more there. The speed is more there for the Daytona 500 than it is for the 400. In terms
Sure.
like in the last 8 Coke 400s, his average starting spot is 19.4.
I feel like that's dragged down a little bit because last year he started P31.
Yeah.
2015 he started P37. 2014
Agreed.
he started P43.
In the last 7 Daytona 500s, his average starting spot is 2.3.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that's my point.
It's 1 2 2 1 2 1 7. So yes, if he's starting front row, it hampers him some. If he's starting in the top 10, I'm fine with it. If he's starting outside the top 10, even better. He's posted 3 top 10 finishes, top 8 finishes in the last 4 Coke 400s. So
even in the 500 this past year, earlier this year, he finished second.
Yeah. So he's been arguably the most consistent plate racer among the Hendrick guys for a while now. You can make a case for Chase Elliott, but those 2 have clearly been the best Hendrick plate guys. Feel like Joey Logano always gets some love at plate tracks.
I did my Fantrax preview for this race, and I just wrote up all 3 Penske drivers. Like, there's reason to like them all.
Yes. I would tend to agree. I mean, generally speaking, Fords are better at drafting tracks than anybody else. Whether it be the drivers that they have or whether it be the cars are simply better at this style of racing, more solid in the style of racing. Whatever the case, Fords tend to do better. Logano has led that group pretty well. He's still pretty pissed from Richmond. And then he went out and had a bad Michigan, which is only going to make him angrier because Penske and Ford love to win Michigan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, anybody is in play this week. We're just going through and giving you guys that we are higher on than not, right? But literally anybody's in play because we don't know what's going to happen. We've seen crazy things happen here. including
To that point, though,
wrecking each other on the final corner.
one thing we haven't really discussed so far, and we're not done previewing the drivers, but we haven't really talked about team stacking and manufacturing stacking. Based on how qualifying shakes out, like there is a path to play all three Penske drivers. I don't anticipate Austin Cindric qualifying well. I could be wrong. He
doesn't typically.
But again, for the Daytona 500, qualified 6th. In Atlanta, he qualified 8th. He qualified 2nd for Talladega. So maybe he does go out there and qualify well. I mean, if these guys are all starting, what's that?
In the 2 Coke 400s that Cindric has run, he's qualified 14th and 16th.
And that's playable, I still think.
Yes.
Especially people still love to try and cram every dollar of salary that they can into their lineup. And I think they will see that there are cheaper options just starting further back. Cindric, if the 3 Penske guys can get up front, it's not entirely like such a bad play. If you're doing 20 lineups, maybe do 1 or 2 Penske stacks and then find other ways to get unique. It is a tough stack if they all qualify like in the top 15, though. It's almost like an ill-advised stack, but certainly contrarian at that point.
Yeah, so you can definitely stack manufacturers, you can stack teams, because they try to pit together. They try to ride around the track together. So when one does well, theoretically all of them do well. However, it does bite you in the rear end if they all are together and they all, wreck out. We've seen that happen with, like Toyotas, like the Gibbs foursome wrecked out a few plate races ago because they all pitted together, came back on the track. They were mid-pack. That's where the wreck happened. They all got taken out. It happens. But to maximize your point upside, it does make sense in some of your lineups to stack teams and stack manufacturers. And that's not usually a concept we talk about with NASCAR. Speaking of Toyotas, I'm avoiding Martin Truex Jr. Dude just doesn't have very good luck at plate tracks. Like,
I'm on the fence
because he needs the. I mean, he doesn't.
He can still get into the playoffs on points, but I was.
Yes.
It seems it's almost like weekly that I give Ryan Stevens a plug, and I guess for Truex, this would be the plug this week because you're not wrong because the finishes are all that really matters, and
he doesn't get credit for running as well as he has. Like he's run inside the top 10 quite a bit. He just seems to get caught up in the wrecks that happen from the front of the pack way more often than you would hope for.
Correct. Okay, so that actually kind of, I guess, encapsulates like what I was trying to get at because Ryan does a lot of great work, and I don't know how much I put into the true performance metric that he does for drafting races, only because there's so much variance, and so but like Martin Truex Jr. This will be the only driver that I plug for the website because I don't want to give away too much of their data. But like he's top 10 so far this year at Daytona, Atlanta, and Talladega for Ryan's rating. But again, the finishes have not been there. I also wonder like what's the motivation at this point? Even if he makes the playoffs, it's hard to imagine him going very far. I don't really see him making the round of 8, maybe the round of 12, but the wins haven't been there. He's had some really good runs and really good cars, but it's just like he either gets punted, gets in a wreck. Even last week, led laps. Had 26 fastest laps, 28 laps led, still spun, brought out a caution, and finished 24th. So I like the speed. I feel like if something goes wrong, he just kind of mails it in for the day.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that going on. And to your point, if you look back at the last 10 Daytona 500s, Truex is inside the top 10 when it comes to average running position.
Yeah.
But he's like 15th or 16th when it comes to average finish position.
Correct. Yeah.
And roughly the same. He's not inside the top 10 for running position at Coke 400, but he's just outside of it. But he's worse in terms of finish. So he runs better than he gets credit for. And I just feel like with Truex, every time I play him at a plate track, it's like a waiting game. It's like, ooh, he's making moves. He's up front. He's up front. Oh, no, wreck. He's the only one that gets taken out in the wreck that comes from the front of the pack. Okay. So
I can say that I'd rather pay $300 more for Kyle Busch or pay $500 for Bubba Wallace, who
or
you mentioned
Buescher.
already. Yeah, but like
Buescher won this race last year.
did he really?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. He did win 3 races last year.
He won this race. He won this race last year. He didn't have to because he was already in, but he did win the race.
Yeah.
And if I'm just looking at last 4 or the last 10 Coke 400s, we talked about how much we love Bubba Wallace. His average finish is 10.7. Buescher's average finish in one more race is 13.9.
Not
And
too
he's
bad.
posted in the last 6 races, in the last 6 Coke 400s, he's posted a 5th, a 9th, a 2nd, and a 1st.
Nice. That's
With a
solid.
17th and a 27th. But still,
Really good.
if you're posting 4 top 9 finishes in 6 races,
Mm-hmm.
then you've really started to figure some stuff out. So I really do quite like Chris Buescher this week. This year he does need a win because he is flirting with that cutoff line in the playoffs, and so he's if we are in love with Keselowski for the equipment and how Fords drive, and RFK has been pretty good at plate tracks, we'll take the discount on Buescher.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was that close to the cutoff line. Bubba's outside the picture currently.
It's pretty close. The playoff picture, of course, NASCAR for some silly reason on their playoff picture standings on their website still has Austin Dillon somehow inside the playoffs because their website. Oh, hey, nope, they fixed it. Yay, congratulations.
But he's no longer 32nd in points, at least.
Yeah. Buescher is 16 points to the good coming into Daytona.
Which isn't very much.
No, Ross Chastain is
2
1
races
point to the good, and Bubba Wallace is 1 point out. But by the way, Kyle Busch is 18th, 93 points off the cutoff line.
I think I'm calling a Kyle Busch win this week.
Oh,
yeah,
we're going straight bold.
I might go there.
Although in the last 2 weeks, it's not that bold. RCR has been way better the last 2 weeks after the Olympic break, and they basically retriggered their entire staff.
We were talking before the podcast because Andy Petrie retired. I think Keith Rodden took over as the competition director. And Austin Dillon goes out and Austin Dillon had one of the 3 best cars at Richmond. It sucks that a feel-good win for him basically became a, you're kind of a jerk kind of win because he had to wreck 2 people to get there. But then Kyle Busch was very competitive and sporty last week at Michigan, led over 20 laps, had a top 5. Something may have clicked in that garage over the break, and I kind of want to buy in and say that Rowdy gets into the playoffs with a win this week. He won at Talladega last year. I think earlier this year at Daytona, he started P34 and finished 12th. I could be wrong, but he also finished 3rd at Atlanta in that very close finish with Suarez and Blaney. So,
yeah,
I will take Kyle Busch's. I know we don't normally do picks, but I will pick Rowdy.
Nice. I like it. So, here's the elephant in the room. Are you playing his teammate?
I might as well. I mean, Austin Dillon's won here before, twice. So
yes,
yes,
he's won twice at Daytona, and I believe once at Talladega.
Let's find out.
It's twice at Daytona. There's a Texas win, and then there's the asterisk of a Richmond win. Does he only have 4 wins or 5?
I think he has 5. I wish somebody would there was a website.
Austin Dillon started 5th at Talladega earlier in the year. Didn't run very well. Daytona was a bad. I think his engine blew at Daytona this year. But yeah, historically though, he's got a shot here. He's run pretty well at plate tracks,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a track where it's way tougher for like Logano and Hamlin to get back at him.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also just not safe. Oh, he won at Charlotte.
Oh yes, the Coke. He won the Coke 600.
Yeah, 20. I think that was his first win, and then the next year he won at Daytona.
Right. His first two wins were Crown Jewels in the Coke 600 and Daytona 500. So that's fun. But he's also had speed. Like he had pretty decent speed at Michigan before getting caught up in some stuff. Obviously had a very good car at Richmond, despite having to wreck people to win it. If that caution hadn't come out. By the way, the only person to apologize for that race is Ricky Stenhouse. Stenhouse apologized to Austin Dillon for bringing out the caution that cost him the legitimate win.
They're the same person.
No, because Ricky Stenhouse doesn't have a silver spoon in his mouth.
Fair. Good point.
So there's that. I'd probably rather play Kyle Busch right now than Austin Dillon, but I'd still play Dillon because this is one of his better shots to actually get back into the playoffs and have a win that actually counts for playoff eligibility and points and whatnot. But yeah, other than this, I am intrigued by Noah Gragson.
Yeah, go for it. Lay it on me.
I mean,
I will then turn the tables and lay a value play on you.
Okay. So Gragson ran this race last year, finished 5th. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's also run the Daytona 500 a couple of I think he's run it 3 times. He's moved up pretty well in most of them, and this year's Daytona 500 he finished 9th. So we've basically got back-to-back Daytona races in which he's finishing inside the top 10 while starting basically in the last row or back couple of rows in both of those races. So he's a guy who has figured out how to wait his turn through traffic, wait it out, and come up and do well. As memory serves, he also ran pretty well in these races in the Xfinity series, if I recall. So, yeah, I quite like Noah Gragson. I think he's a guy who I think most people have checked out on for, one reason or another. He also, by the way, started 36th at Talladega and finished 3rd. So, again, he's pretty good at starting in the back of the pack here and moving up. So, Noah Gragson would be, I think, my favorite cheaper play. He's still 6,900, but I think he's my favorite cheaper play.
I think if I need to punt, a couple weeks ago, I was kind of flabbergasted when this driver was even in the field at Richmond. But I'm going right back to Parker Retzlaff at the phenomenal price tag of $5,000.
Yeah, because his terrible equipment doesn't really matter.
It doesn't, but I do think he needs to qualify. I don't know how many cars make the field. 38 for this race?
I think it's 38.
I think, and there are 40 drivers. So he does need to qualify, but he's in the 62 for Beard Motorsports. Car sucks. It's not great, but that doesn't really matter at a super speedway. Retzlaff, to his credit, he comes from a short, flat track background, but at the same time, he drives full-time in the Xfinity Series for Jordan Anderson Racing. Jordan Anderson is a respected super speedway drafter, whatever. His teammate is Jeb Burton, a guy who has won twice in the Xfinity Series at Talladega. Retzlaff, in small sample size, kind of get it. But at the same time, he's finished 7th or better in all 3 of his Daytona Xfinity Series races. He was top 5.
Apologies, there are 40 guys on the entry list for this race.
But 38 make it, right?
No, 40 will make
40
it.
make it?
Yep.
Oh, okay, so he's in.
Correct. He's in. Whether qualifying gets rained out or not, he's in. He's just going to start. I mean, if it gets rained out, then he's starting maybe dead last.
Yeah.
I don't know. BJ McLeod might be dead last.
But either way, Retzlaff's finished 7th or better in all 3 of his Daytona races in the Xfinity Series. Top 5 at Atlanta this year. 7th last year at Talladega. I think this year he didn't finish because he had an ignition issue. So for 5K, granted, he will start deep in the field. I don't want him to start dead last. I would like to see him start maybe P31, P32. Because I still think that if he can just keep the car clean, I don't know. It's weird because he doesn't come from this kind of background, but a small sample size in the Xfinity Series, and he's consistently just moving up and scoring good finishes as long as he finishes. So I can't even call him a punt because we acknowledge all the time that salary just doesn't matter for these races, and you should be able to afford. You should be able to build any kind of lineup and leave plenty of money on the table. But Retzlaff, I just don't think he's going to be a name common or casual NASCAR DFS fans are going to flock to.
Okay, so we go with Parker Retzlaff. We go with Noah Gragson. And we go with your pick to win, Kyle Busch. And I go with Buescher, who I love this week, and Bowman. We have $12,400 left, which gives us anybody we want.
Yeah.
But you also don't have to use. I don't know. I'm comfy leaving at least $2,000 on the table this week. If
Just
not,
play Bubba.
Oh, that's sure. We can get Bubba. Have 3,400 left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Swear to God, if this is the winning lineup.
No stacks at all in there.
No stacks. We told you can stack. We've got a bunch of different manufacturers. We've got, what is Retzlaff in? Is he in a Ford this week? I don't even remember.
It's a Chevy.
Yeah, we got, I think, 3 Chevys and 1 Toyota, 3 Chevys, 4 Chevys, and a Ford. 2 Fords, 3 Chevys, and a Toyota. There you go.
Well, the good news is that the Chevys make up about half the field.
Yeah, so if you're stacking Chevys, you get half the field. I wouldn't go full manufacturer stack, though. I would mix in, go maybe, if you want to go 4 from one manufacturer and then 2 from another, fine. Except for Toyotas, obviously, there's only 6 of them. But yeah.
Any final thoughts before we go? I know you normally plug the betting article. This is actually a great week to get in on NASCAR betting, just because the long shots are just so much fun to take, and even then you can still get really good top 10 odds and things like that.
We can highlight this a little bit. I am working on the betting article. It will be out on Thursday because it's a Saturday night race, so we're getting it out a day earlier. So last week at Richmond, Kyle Larson was the favorite, and Denny was a close second. Anyway, Kyle Larson was the favorite at plus 550 at Michigan last week. Okay. Denny right now is tied with Joey Logano as the betting favorite in terms of best odds available. They're both plus 1,200. Those are the favorites. And then Ryan Blaney's plus 1,300. So in terms of betting winners, yes, it's more chaotic, less predictable than your standard track, which is why the odds are longer. But if you follow betting strategies and you follow, trends and whatnot, you can bet the winner and get 2, 3, 4 times better returns this week than last week. Right? Like Bubba Wallace, who we've talked about, is arguably the best plate racer in the field. Certainly among the Toyota camp, but arguably in the field. FanDuel has him going off to win at plus 2,000, which is 20 to 1.
Yeah.
Okay. If this was Kansas, which he's won at, and he's great at intermediates, he would be like 1,200, like plus 1,200. So 12 to 1, or maybe shorter. Right. So we talked about Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher won this race last year. We talked about how he's put up 4 top 9 finishes in the last 6 Coke 400s. Chris Buescher is going off right now. It's 16 to 1 to win. So now, the downside is the prop bets are not as good of returns on top 5s and top 10s. Because literally everybody has a shot at a top 10 in this field. I think last year going into the Daytona 500, I think they said something like 36 or 37 of the 40 cars, the drivers had finished top 10 at Daytona previously. Right? Because as long as you're on the track late, you've got a shot at a top 10 finish. So if you're looking at finish props, those are not nearly the returns that we would normally see at a more normal track. So, like even our, Kyle Busch has run here really well previously, right? Last week he was like, I don't know, plus 150 or something for a top 10, I think. This week he's plus 115 is your best odds, and that's Bet Rivers. Everything else is negative money, right? The next best odd is at BetMGM for him to finish top 10 is minus 135. So there's your trade-off a little bit, is that the winner bets are fun and you can hit longer shots. But the prop bets way shorter odds. Like Noah Gragson, who we threw out as a great cheap play and has run pretty well here, he's 45 to 1 to win.
What does he feel like top 10? Is that out yet?
Yeah. Let's see, Noah Gragson for top 10. Oh, it reloaded the field where I was looking. Let me see. It opened at plus 130. Right now, your best odd, again, is at Bet Rivers at plus 200. Everybody else is between like plus 130 and plus 140. It still isn't terrible.
Yeah, I would take plus 200
It's
for a
plus
top 10.
money return on a top 10 at Daytona.
Yeah.
So that's not bad. But again, like last week, I can bring up what I did for, not that these necessarily hit, but just to give you an idea. Oh yeah, okay. So Denny was the favorite last week. He was plus 575. He's the favorite this week at plus 1,200. There's a direct comparison for guys we expect to win, right? Let's see. Bubba Wallace was minus 120 last week to finish top 10 at Michigan. Top 10 for Bubba Wallace right now. We can get, it's boosted at Bet Rivers to plus 115.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get to Bet Rivers, you're looking at minus 135 to minus 180. So there you go. There's a difference where guys have now gone the opposite way on props. Alex Bowman was plus 130 last week for a top 10 finish. He's minus 120 right now this week.
All right. Well, also just remembered, no practice this week. Thank God.
Correct. There is no practice. There's as little pre-race track time as they can physically get away with because nobody wants to wreck their cars and ruin their race weekends before it even starts.
All right. Well, Matt, you and I will be in the Discord. I'll be in there with updates for the Xfinity Series race Saturday. I'll be in there Sunday as well. And we'll both be in there probably Saturday for the race. But Matt, best of luck to you this week and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.